3 minutes to make a few announcements, and then we'll turn it over to our moderator, Erica Barnett. The 3 sponsoring organizations are the Lifton Springs Community Council, which is a nonprofit organization, one of the oldest community councils in the city, and the D5 Community Network, which is an independent, we are not connected with any city officials or candidates, and we are an independent organization of volunteers who care very much about District 5. And also Revisioning Northgate, which is a relatively new organization, which is concerned with the quality of life for all of the residents in the greater Northgate area. None of the organizations that are the 3 sponsors are endorsing a particular candidate as an organization. So we just want to make that clear. We just want to hear from people. If you'd like more information about any of the 3 organizations, there's some on the tables, and you can catch some of us who are with them, and we'd be delighted to introduce more about us to you. The D5 Community Network is going to be recording this and putting it on our YouTube channel, Thank You to Die. And there are some slips of paper at the door if you'd like to get the address for the link. We know we're competing with the National Democratic debate tonight. Tom Perez did not check with us when he so you may know people who would like to hear this. The 3 sponsors are responsible for how this was organized, who was invited, and how the questions were set up. So I want to just tell you very quickly, we are not taking questions from the floor, but the 3 sponsoring organizations each provided a question that the candidates got a week ago. The rest of the questions, the candidates will hear for the first time tonight along with you, and they were all submitted over social media by people in District 5, and then a committee went through them to try to create a very broad range of issues that we could hear about. The candidates will each have 90 seconds to respond, and we have a timekeeper, thank you, Janine, and she'll ring a little bell to indicate to people when their time is up. I'd like to acknowledge Literacy Source and the Lake City Collective who are here to do simultaneous interpretation. And I'd like to ask you to help them out because it is very difficult to do that. And candidates, we've been asked to ask you not to talk too fast, please. We're going to try to fit in a brief break halfway through because they'll need to recharge their brain cells. And you can help them out by not calling out anything, making any noise or comments from the floor that's very distracting, and also hold your applause till the end. Even if you hear something that gets you very excited, try to restrain yourself because it will interrupt their concentration. I'd like to acknowledge that Safeway and especially PCC donated the food and beverages that are here tonight, and we thank them along with North Seattle College. And then finally, a word about our moderator. Erica Barnett is a journalist here in Seattle. She was gracious enough to respond to our invitation to be the moderator. She runs a local political website that many of you know called C is for Crank. And she is going to be reading brief 90-second bios of each of the candidates that we invited them to submit ahead of time. And so we'll start with that.
Thank you. And I am going to try to keep this microphone from popping and also to keep these introductions to the 90 seconds. And if there's anything else you all would like to say about yourselves, please fit it into the answer to a question because these are the introductions. Thank you. Our first candidate, we're going to start from stage right over on your left end, audience. It's Deborah Juarez. Councilmember Deborah Juarez is the first person to ever represent District 5 on the Seattle City Council. She received 64.3% of the vote in 2015. Her life experience as a mom, union member, attorney, and North Seattle resident of 30 plus years guides her work at City Hall. An enrolled member of the Blackfeet Nation, she is also the first Native American to serve on the Seattle City Council in its 150-year history. Her top priorities have been improving public safety, increasing transportation options, building sidewalks, and addressing the need for affordable housing and helping our homeless neighbors. She is proud to have delivered more than $2.4 billion for new development and created thousands of jobs for Seattleites. She also successfully fought to have the 130th Street Light Rail Station added to Sound Transit 3. With her appointment to the Sound Transit Board, she will continue to fight to open that station 7 years early in 2024 instead of 2031. But there is still more work to do, and she wants to finish what we have started. Councilmember Juarez hopes to earn your vote again and is fiercely optimistic about what she can accomplish for D5 in another 4 years on the City Council. So going to Councilmember Juarez's right, we have John Lombard. John Lombard has been a community and environmental leader through the 17 years he has lived in District 5. He is the author of the book Saving Puget Sound and led Thornton Creek Alliance's successful efforts to daylight the creek at what is now Thornton Place, which had been an asphalt parking lot south of Northgate Mall for decades. More recently, John co-chaired the North District Council and then helped organize and lead the D5 Community Network, one of the sponsors for tonight's event and the only association of community groups across an entire City Council district in Seattle. In connection with these efforts, John was an active volunteer in developing the Build Lake City Together plan. On the west side of District 5, he has supported community-led efforts to improve pedestrian safety and to develop a long-term vision and plan to make the urban villages along the Aurora corridor places that are brought together by a transformed Aurora instead of being divided by its continued neglect. John is running for City Council to bring engaged, inclusive leadership to District 5. He loves the diversity of D5 and knows how much it depends on continued affordability. He is committed to making communities in D5 true partners in guiding the future of North Seattle. Next candidate is Mark Mendez. Mark was born and raised in Seattle and has lived all his life in the D5 neighborhood of Lake City. Mendez graduated from the University of Washington with a BA in political science and from Seattle University with a master's in public administration. Mendez has worked for several nonprofit education and public organizations and has a record of getting things done by bringing together and partnering with a diverse group of people and organizations to address the biggest challenges in the city. Mendez was co-chair of the North District Council, on the board of Lake City Neighborhood Alliance, on the board of Meadowbrook Community Care, and steering committee member of the Build Lake City Together project. Mendez has worked very closely with immigrant and refugee families across D5 and has worked with a team of community organizers to support underserved communities across cultures. He has brought together and worked with diverse community organizations and partners to successfully advocate for several equity issues across D5, like preserving public beach access of 130th Lake City Beach, fighting for equity at our Cedar Park Elementary, advocating for the 130th Street Light Rail Station, a new Lake City Community Center, new parks and open spaces, and creating more safe streets and sidewalks. And our last candidate is Ann Davison-Sattler. Ann Davison-Sattler is a mom, attorney, and community volunteer who has lived in Seattle for the past 23 years. She began working in Seattle with the Sonics in 1996 and is now an attorney while raising 2 children in District 5. Ann has long been an advocate in the community, volunteering with individuals transitioning out of incarceration, organizing local environmental cleanups, and working with the UN in a Cambodian refugee camp along the Thai-Cambodian border. Through tutoring at the local Central Area Youth Association, serving as Vice President of Recreational Development for the Seattle Youth Soccer Association, and helping spearhead efforts, raising $200,000 for Seattle Public Schools, Ann has proven her honest dedication to our kids and Seattle's future. Ann taught English to Thai students while she lived in Thailand, and now teaches international business law at the University of Washington Continuum College to visiting international students. She has experience as an attorney and arbitrator for nearly 20 years, and she has also worked in the U.S. House of Representatives, serving as a caseworker to resolve constituents' problems regarding their Social Security, Medicaid, or Medicare, and to assisting veterans and active military personnel. Thank you all so much for being here, and the way this will work is everybody is going to have opportunities to be the first one to answer the question. So we're going to start on this first question, which was submitted to all of you in advance, starting with Councilmember Deborah Juarez.
Great. Licton Springs?
This is a question from the Licton Springs Community Council. Licton Springs and Aurora Licton Urban Village do not have a community center, library, or indoor meeting place to hold community events. What steps would you advocate to move on a plan to address this? And you have 90 seconds, and again, our timekeeper is Janine right over here.
I got it. We on?
Can you hear me? Great. First of all, thank you all for allowing me to be here tonight. I know you'd rather be somewhere else. It's nice out and we have the debates going on. So what I want to say is that I would do for Licton Springs, the ALEV people have been so good to us. What we did for Lake City Way, when we started with nothing to raise $18 million to build the Lake City Community Center. Being the chair of parks has been phenomenal, and I'm also the chair of the Metropolitan Park District. We're coming up on our 6-year plan. We're going to have money for capital and money for programs. So that's one area. Will also be what we've done before with the past, well, we've been through 5 mayors now, but 3 budgets, and we've had a 97% budget success rate, in which we will also look for funds to continue to build ALEV. Now, one of the questions that will come up later, and I just want to say something now, one thing that we have learned, and I think the executive learned and Department of Neighborhoods has learned, is there's a difference between a neighborhood and a community. And Licton Springs is a community. And Licton Springs is a community that deserves what other communities have. We paved 12 blocks. We put in money to fix the pedestrian bridge over on Aurora. We'll continue to put in money to Aurora Springs and Bitter Lake Food Bank, which we've opened. And for me, what's really important is when I've met with the Licton Spring folks, I've met with them at least 3 times. We've walked the neighborhood. We've put up the moratorium for 1 year to stop some of the building, to have a pause, so we could talk about what kind of zoning would go in there. During MHA, we had 17 amendments, all of which were passed. 9 of them were focused on Aurora and Licton Springs. Thank you.
So I'm John Lombard, and I think we need an overall plan for the Aurora-Licton Urban Village as well as for the Bitter Lake Urban Village. That plan would include community facilities like a community center, library, and meeting space, but would more fundamentally address what it takes to make these urban villages true communities. Meeting spaces and facilities are important components of that, but if that's all the change we get, we'd still be falling far short of what these communities need. North Aurora is probably the most neglected place in Seattle. It's currently being repaved by the state. They offered to partner with the city to include sidewalks and other improvements at the same time, but the city declined, even though an upgrade to Aurora was advertised as part of the 2015 Move Seattle levy. Aurora, Licton, and Bitter Lake were officially made urban villages back in the 1990s, but the city never followed through with what it would really take to make them communities. The residents of Aurora, Licton have organized themselves to try to address that. They've reached out to businesses to try to work together. They need a partner with their council member who can also help organize the Bitter Lake area to move forward with the transformation of the whole Aurora corridor. I've got a plan on my website for that, and it would be a top priority for me if I was elected.
Hi, thanks for coming, everybody. So Lake City has a community center that was built in 1954. We don't have a gym, we don't have a teen center. It's a really old building. And for decades, the Lake City neighbors have got together and advocated for a new center. This is something that we really need with the diversity and the density. And we gave talks and walks to mayors and went down to City Hall. It's really all of us that worked hard, hours and hours of volunteering to advocate for this center. So I've been a part of that process for a long time. Lake City Neighborhood Alliance, co-chair of North District Council, and I just want to bring that grassroots and collaborative approach because it really is the neighborhood that got this going, and then we have to do that. So when I got to visit the Aurora Licton Springs Council last week, they're doing really great work, but they need more support. So what I want to do is apply what we've done in Lake City and apply it to Licton Springs. Let's have a civic hub, let's have a grand vision, let's have a community center with the farmer's market and the library, and then you put affordable housing on top, and then you have the people who live on top can also enjoy the center. And then you have service providers that are part of that grand vision, so not only are you going to play basketball, you get help with the services that you need. So it's really exciting. You have an opportunity to do something amazing. It's a blank slate. Let's work together to find solutions.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again for coming out tonight to listen to us, because your time is precious and you don't get that time back. So thanks for listening to me as we talk about what our issues are tonight and what we're concerned about. I'm going to hopefully be less than a minute 30 because I'm going to be really direct. I'd like to move the North Precinct Police Station in that right across the street here, and I think that'd be a great location to have a community center. We could revitalize that and have it be really close to an area that is in need of that type of a service, and it's really good in walking distance. So I really think we could repurpose that, and we could relocate the North Precinct Police Station. I have a proposed plan of where I'd like to put that, but that would be a building that would be available if I were to pursue my other plan. Another option would be to renovate the Robert Eaglestaff Middle School and have that be attached to the school, because I, for one, used community centers growing up and needing to go to after-school activities. I think it would be a great place to have that available for kids, and it would build in with my addiction prevention platform that I really am concerned about.
Great, thanks. So as Kathleen mentioned, some of these questions, and I think we're hopefully going to have time to get to them all, were submitted by the community over social media. So I'm going to jump to one of those. The first question, and we'll start with Ann Settler. What did we learn from the experience of the Licton Springs Aurora Low Barrier Encampment, and how did it affect your ideas on addressing homelessness in the district?
Ready? We learned that approach fails. It fails individuals who are addicted, it fails people who are experiencing homelessness, and it fails neighbors and business owners. I met with Kelly, the owner of Seattle Fabrics right next door, and he estimates he lost about $10,000 in walk-in business because of that low barrier camp that was right adjacent to his business. I heard from concerned neighbors that had to deal with that with their kids, what was happening in the area. I also helped clean up needles along the area. We cleaned up over 200 needles right along the area right next to that encampment. And I talked to many, many business owners, some of which could not even keep their employees for more than a few hours because of what they had to work through, which was the cleanup of the needles, cleanup of human feces, waste, clothing, everything just littered along the businesses along the way. So it was really not a success. We need to do better for that. We need to make sure that there is a needs assessment location where we can get people connected to services and not elongate their addiction. We want to give people help, and we want to make sure the neighborhoods are cared for and clean and safe for all of us.
I'm just going to go right down the line. Thanks.
So, people experiencing homelessness and affordable housing is probably one of the biggest challenges we face as a city. And we have to come at it with compassion and love. I think that's where we have to that's where we have to start from. And case management and wraparound services, navigators, helping people become back a part of society, and helping them navigate the food system and getting services. I think what we need to do is invest more in case management and provide housing first, housing now, because it's very difficult to get better if you don't have the basic necessities, which is a roof over your head and food. So case management, wraparound services, organizations like Plymouth Housing, there's the best practices that we can apply from other cities and apply it here in Seattle.
So the fundamental thing that we learned from the Aurora Licton Tiny House Village was that it was the wrong place to put a low barrier or no barrier tiny home village, right in the middle of the biggest drug market in North Seattle. When you look at our overall strategies for homelessness and what we need to do if we're going to be reducing the unauthorized encampments that we're seeing, all over the place, in our parks, on our sidewalks, on the interchanges for our highways, we do need authorized encampments. We need places that the city actually does organize and provide services to, and provide security for both them and for the surrounding neighborhood. And some of those are going to need to be low barrier places, because that's what some of these people actually need. But that still means you've got to be thoughtful about where you place that. You wouldn't want to place it where the temptations are going to be greatest, where the opportunities for drug dealers are going to be the strongest. So I think it was a mistake on that location. I've talked with the lead from the nonprofit, the Low Income Housing Institute, that ran that, and they also agreed. So that really was a lesson learned. And I think we also needed to have been working with that surrounding community, as I had done, to try to address the kind of encircling issues that grew in that larger neighborhood.
Thank you.
I want to start with framing the issue about homelessness and where we're at with some facts and figures, and then I want to talk about what we've been doing. Right now, at the last count, we are at about 11,000 people are unsheltered. 8% of those, we have 11,000 homelessness. What we do know now is, and we're happy about the statistic that we've been counting, is that we are down about 8% decrease in homelessness. What's more troubling for us is the statistic is that 10% of our unsheltered are Native Americans, and we make up less than 1% of the population. And it's really clear that what we have to do as a council is spend our money more effectively. And what we've done, and I co-sponsored this 2 years in a row in our budget, is we've expanded the navigation team with Jackie St. Louis and working with Sergeant Eric Sir. We are now up to 7 days a week, 38 staff members, and a budget is now $7.6 million. So, and like I said, we've tripled the staff. One thing I want to share is when we put up the Tiny House Village, we met with the A-Love community twice. They put together 10 issues, and we met 8 of those. The other 2 we couldn't, but we ended up working it out. And again, I want to thank the A-Love community because most of the members we met with really helped us get this low barrier system up. It was supposed to be there for 2 years, and it was exactly there 2 years, and then it, of course, as you know, is gone now. I have some exciting news for you, and this has been going on. I've been talking about it, but it's finally crystallized. We were briefed. I also sit on the Board of Health. I also sit on the Seattle City Council Homelessness Committee. Can I just finish real quick? Okay.
You'll have to fit it into another answer.
Okay.
I'm going to keep everybody to time. All right, the next question comes from the D5 Community Network.
Hold
Yes.
on. When I do this, you have about 15 seconds left. I was just trying to be unobtrusive, so. Thanks.
All right, next question is from the D5 Community Network. In August of 2016, Mayor Ed Murray issued an order entitled Achieving Equitable Outreach and Engagement for All to change the way the Department of Neighborhoods interacts with the city's community groups. 3 years after the change, are you satisfied with the way DON conducts its outreach, how it distributes funds, and if not, how would you as a city council member work with the executive branch to make improvements? And we'll start with Mark Mendez.
I've had the chance to work with a lot of Department of Neighborhood staff on lots of different special events in Lake City, and Thomas Whittemore is a good example of someone doing a really great job, but he has the Ship Canal all the way to 145th. That's his territory, and he's an amazing person, but that's way too much territory for him to cover. So I think we need to increase these outreach people, the Department of Neighborhoods. Also, what we learned in Lake City is that let's pay stipends of people who live in the community, refugee immigrant families who are already doing the organizing, and let's have it make a job. It's a community organizing job where they already have the deep connections in the neighborhood. Let's pay them stipends so they can continue doing the good work. Put on special events like Lucha Libre and World Dance Parties. That's something we do to bring people together, is by having fun. So we need to not only increase the coverage of Department of Neighborhoods, but also pay people in the neighborhood, in Lake City, in Bitter Lake, in Aurora, Licton Springs, who are the Ethiopian community, Eritrean, Latinx community, and then we can start building community, because I think everyone in this room who goes to meetings, they see what the challenge is to try to get underserved people in those meetings. So let's honor their time, value their time, let's make it a job, because their work is invaluable. So that's what we learned in Lake City, and want to apply that to all of District 5.
So actually, I think that's a fantastic idea. And I definitely think that would be a great way for the Department of Neighborhoods to be more effective in its outreach to the whole community in our areas and across the whole city. You know, one of the first people that I met as part of my campaign was Jim Deers, who was the first director of the Department of Neighborhoods and led it throughout its heyday as you know, really the standard bearer for a much more welcoming and true partnering relationship between the city and neighborhoods. He even wrote a book called Neighbor Power, Building Community the Seattle Way. You know, it seems ironic now that was the title. That came out 15 years ago. He's consulting about that all around the world, but he's really not listened to it all here in his own city these days. So we didn't have city council districts back then, and district representation does offer new avenues for connection between neighborhoods and city government. We can't go back to that old system, but the old system did have some real strengths. The biggest strength, I think, was that it was bottom up. You know, it allowed the communities to be the ones that identified who would participate, who would be speaking up, and basically, if you took the initiative, you know, you could be a leader with it, rather than the Murray top-down approach.
I'll be very quick. So what I wanted to say is we created the Regional Governance Authority, the RGA. That is, the county and the city are going to get together and they're going to create a PDA, a Public Development Authority. We're going to do an interlocal agreement and a charter, and it's going to be done in August of 2019. And the reason why that is important is because for the last 3 years, we've been telling the county that in order to address homelessness, the city and the county have to work together. So I wanted to get that information out. So the question is, am I happy the way things are now? What Kathy Nyland did? Yes, I am. I think Department of Neighborhood is much more streamlined, and the reason why we did it, the reason why we changed DON, is we wanted to have more equity. We wanted more access, and one thing that I think what a lot of people didn't realize is that we wanted to create an opportunity to have more people join these community groups, these neighborhood groups, so we can meet their needs better. D5 alone had 8 projects in Your Voice, Your Choice, well over $300,000, and we'll continue to do that. That was for 2018. I meet with Tom Whitmore. I've met with Tom many times. I work really closely with Director Andreas Matella. Did I say his name right? Yes. I just call him Andreas. But anyway, one of the things that he said to me that's very interesting is at D5 he felt that the people here were really good about getting online and getting information and voting and getting money for their district for these programs. And the other one was, of course, is Find It, Fix It. And
green light. All right. Yeah, the Find It, Fix It. Has anybody called on that? I've heard a lot of people have called and reported, and then they just get dismissed as unresolved.
My stuff got fixed.
Great.
All of it.
I thought we were not going to have people
Please no
interject
shouting from the audience.
Yeah. So. Really, the basic thing of the Department of Neighborhoods, it sounds like it's a lot of infrastructure, governmental infrastructure that's really costly, and I expect there to be results if we have that, right? So it is, my campaign is called Neighbors for Ann, because I want to listen to the neighbors and hear and talk with the neighborhoods, right? And that's what it's about, is what do the individual neighborhoods want? And then our job would be to listen and to actually do it. And right now we have a lot of mechanisms that we can report things and do these studies and check out, you know, who else we should hire to do things, but we want to have the neighborhoods feel a sense of ownership, a sense of civic pride with their neighborhood, and that they know that they can come to someone that has a district representative, because we districted to have someone more in reach. And so then they know they have the backing that they can get it done and have their neighborhood be safe and clean in the way that they want to have it, with the distinctiveness of their own neighborhood.
Thanks, and I appreciate, I just want to say, everybody keeping to time. I know it probably feels brutal, but it helps us get more questions in. So the next question is from social media, from community. There were a lot of questions about Vision Zero and safer streets and traffic calming, and the question that was zeroed in on is about sidewalks. One distinction in District 5 is the lack of sidewalks in much of the district. How would you negotiate the challenge of installing bike lanes and safe walkways and bikeways, given limited city funding and the inevitable loss of parking? So I guess pick whatever elements of that question you want to answer in 90 seconds, and we'll start with John.
Okay, so sidewalks,
Sidewalk.
bike lanes.
How do you negotiate all of those competing demands, especially given that there's always going to be objections about the loss of parking? That's how I would summarize that question.
Well, you know, talk with the people who are there first. I mean, that's the most important thing, is to really have early and often communication with the neighborhoods that are going to be affected. You know, I think the huge dust-up that occurred on 35th in Wedgwood could have been avoided if there had been much better discussion at an early stage. You know, you do have to be realistic on these. District 5 is the home of 2/3 of the city's missing sidewalks. We're not going to get all of them, but there are a lot of places where we need them, and where the city's own equity policies would justify directing a lot more city spending up here than your voice, your choice is capable of doing. So we need to think at a broader scale about where the sidewalks should go, and where we can use other means like home zones that can slow traffic down. And then think about where the bike lanes are going to best fit with that. So given the fact that
Sorry, my legs are cramping. I'm really glad we asked about bike lanes. I think there's something we have to keep in mind about the pedestrian bike lane plan, and then the bike plan, the bike plan that we have for the city. What a lot of people don't know, those of us who have to follow this, is that when we started out that bike plan, I think in 2007, correct me if I'm wrong, it has been through 5 iterations since then. And when it first started out, the bike plan under McGinn, before McGinn actually, it focused on ridership and safety. And every year, or every time we've renewed it, we've added things. And then we added connectivity, then we added an equity lens. And I think what we've seen in this last iteration, particularly with 35th, is now we have to look at through a business lens as well. So what I'm trying to tell you all is that this type of issue, when we have a plan, it isn't just set in stone. It has to develop and evolve with the neighborhood as more people come in, and as we get more voices at the table. We had different voices at the table back in 2007 than we've had in 2019. What I didn't want to see, and what we saw, is people became very polarized. You were with us or you were against us. You liked bike lanes or you didn't. And my attitude is bike lanes are great. Protected bike lanes are even better. Bike lanes that are protected that people use are even better. But we have to be able to talk through all of those issues about all of those lenses. The one that I was most impressed with was the equity lens that we're now discussing in the south end. Bike lanes south of the Ship Canal, down in District 2 and 3.
I think for bikers and walkers, because I've been both, we need to make sure that we have adequate lanes for each. Right, so we don't want to have every street have sidewalks and bike lanes, because it doesn't really make a lot of sense within our city. We have people who use every mode of transportation. So we would look at the topography, we would make sure that it flows with the cyclists. And I've been one, I used to race road bikes, my husband's a big biker. Right, we are a biking family with my kids. So we want to make sure we have some available that obviously have safety precautions for them, but that doesn't mean that every single road needs to have a bicycle lane. So then we would have others that don't have the lane, would have sidewalks, because particularly in the north end, we have a lot of streets where there's gullies on the side, where it erodes out into gravel. So we don't really have the space to have both a bike lane and a sidewalk. So we want to be distinctive. We don't want to just blanket everywhere. We would be specific with the topography that makes sense for the cyclists, and then we need to put sidewalks on the other ones, and then some of them might be okay. Some neighbors like to have just a lot of parking access, right? So then we can have that ability in some of the other areas. But we really can be specific, and we can make sure that we have adequate access for everyone and have there be their specified mode of transportation that they like the most available to them.
So everyone knows the story. Back in 1954, when D5 got annexed by the city, they promised us sidewalks. They lied. So one study is that it would take over 100 years to get all the sidewalks done in D5. So it's not realistic, but we should focus on safe routes to school in arterials. That's the most important priorities, equity, things we should be focused on. Let's make sure the kids can get safely to school. And we need a grassroots approach. We can't just have the city come in and say, we're gonna put bike lanes. We have to have the businesses involved and the residents. And then we also have to, I talked about the refugee and immigrant families. They're also the most vulnerable. So let's pay organizers to organize them so they have a voice as well. Wedgwood is a great example of how people consider it a top-down process. Let's use public art. We started the Lake City Mural Project. Let's use public art. Let's put murals in the middle of some areas so we can slow traffic down. Literacy Source did some really great work trying to get refugee and immigrant families participating in Your Voice, Your Choice. So we actually, in Lake City, we have a model going, where we're actually getting a lot of diverse voices, and because of them, we have a lot of projects, to put up Your Voice, Your Choice. We just had a neighbor, a Lake citizen, Jesse, he worked at Value Village, he was struck 50 miles an hour crossing a crosswalk in Lake City Way. We have to do much, much better.
All right, this will be our last question before we take a quick break to let the folks who are translating simultaneously rest their brains for a minute. So last question for this round comes from Revisioning Northgate. How do you envision the Northgate Urban Center of 2025, and what will you have done to make this vision a reality? And additional information is that we received this question relating to balancing the needs of residents with the needs of unsheltered persons. Oh, I guess this is a separate question, which maybe we'll get to, but we'll start with Northgate. How do you envision the Northgate Urban Center of 2025? And what will you do to make this vision a reality? And we'll start with Deborah.
Great, thank you.
I'm happy to say that we've already started revisioning, and we started revisioning Northgate right before I got elected. And certainly when I started about how we were going to start looking at Northgate. And it started with the pedestrian bike bridge. It started us working with King County to get 1,200 units next to Thornton Place, working with Simon Properties, nailing down the NHL and the OVG for the $80 million training facility with 2 hotels and 1,500 units of market rate housing. It started with us focusing in on the charrette that we did in January of 2018, working with Frank Chop. Also really pushing hard because we're going to have light rail there. We anticipate light rail ridership around 35 or 40,000, where you'll get downtown in 12 minutes. So I could go on and on. I have all my little notes here about what we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We've put a ton of money, and I see Homestead Park. We got in the budget $600,000 to reimagine and redo Homestead Park. Our goal, our long-term goal, is someday to have a performing arts center as well. We're working with OVG and Simon Properties, so when we look at Northgate, we will have transit-oriented development, transit-oriented housing, transit-oriented childcare for the very first time. That grocery store will be a union grocery store. One of the things that we're also very excited about, besides the 3 sheets of ice, the 2 hotels, 1,500 units, we are going to have so much office space, and we're looking at density. Some of our amendments under MHA were completely laser focused on Northgate, Bitter Lake, and Holler Lake. Those are the areas with the high.
So I live in the Northgate area.
Oh, wait, we're going.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so we're going to go back to Ann, and then you'll get your opportunity at the end.
Going back to repurposing our police precinct station right here, I think it would be fabulous if this area were not disconnected from the Northgate renovation that's taking place, right? Because where will they really come to college here? I was a student here when I had my kids that were young. I was a student here. I had the co-op preschool that's here through the North Seattle College. And how would you get here from the transit? Nobody really wants to connect through a bus. So it would be amazing if we could use what we're doing downtown and put a lid over the highway so we had a walkable pathway from this college over to the Northgate Transit Center and the mall and all of these amazing new things that they say they're going to do to really connect the neighborhoods together, right? So that we don't have to, we can eliminate the east-west bus line if we come up with the transit, right? And we are going to have hockey, but you know, we're certainly not making plans for a Sonics practice facility there, I'll tell you that. There's 3 ice rinks. And even though we have the OVG that is there, they are going to get hundreds of millions in public subsidies. Even though it is privately financed up front, they will be getting hundreds of millions of public subsidies back. And so they are coming here, but we are not going to be any closer to getting the Sonics back. And to me, that's important. It's part of our civic pride and civic history, and I'd like to be a step closer to getting them back. So even though we'll have some great things going on there, I want to connect this neighborhood, and I'd like to do some other things with that property that I think would be of good use as well.
So the Northgate opportunity, it's like a blank slate. We have an opportunity to create something really beautiful, to paint a picture that we all want, a place we can all live, work, learn, and play together. But once again, we have to make sure it's a grassroots and collaborative process. Let's make sure that the people who live and work and learn and play they're part of the process of the master plan. And I don't think anyone really has felt a part of the process of re-envisioning Northgate. So I think let's get the groups together, let's get all the stakeholders together, and let's do something let's do something like creative out of the box. The pedestrian bridge, that was an idea that the community generated. That's an example of creativity that we can generate just by having meetings together. And once again, let's bring in our refugee immigrant families that are a very important part of the community. Let's have affordable housing as a major part of the process as well as development. Let's have job training so kids and families can learn the jobs of the future. Well, thank you. Let's make sure it's grassroots and collaborative.
So I'll start again. I live in the Northgate area and have for 17 years. Most likely I'll still be here in 2025 for the time period they're asking about. It will be fantastic to have light rail. It'll be fantastic to have that new pedestrian bridge, which is in fact going forward. I'm looking forward to the changes at the mall, which will make it greener and more neighborhood focused. I expect my kids will enjoy skating at the ice rinks. But there are a lot of other changes pending for Northgate. I was a leader in the stakeholders group that led to the development of Thornton Place and the water quality channel there. That was a successful process, but what's happening now is far more momentous. The whole area is changing. And yet there's no comparable effort by the city to involve the community to try to make a better end result. There's just a jumble of projects. Councilor Juarez mentioned the charrette from 2018 that she attended, and the city sponsored. It actually recommended development of what it called a Northgate Collaborative. That would be similar to that stakeholders effort. I think it actually could, like Mark's saying, reach out even further to the underrepresented communities of this area. We need something like that to address issues like school capacity, pedestrian connections, parking, traffic, and how to minimize displacement of people who are in existing affordable housing when the redevelopment is happening. So this would be a high priority for me, especially as a Northgate resident and a participant in that earlier successful process.
All right, thank you to our candidates. So we're going to take a quick break, and we will reconvene at 7:17. Back. And we're going to jump back in with questions. And this first question is we're going to begin with Anne. And the first question is the one that I started to ask in the middle of another question a minute ago, which is, what is your number one idea for ensuring that the city agencies and the police have enough authority and resources for an effective and sustainable response to homelessness? Sorry. I'll read the whole question. We received questions related to balancing the needs of residents with the needs of unsheltered persons. What is your number one idea for ensuring that city agencies and the police have enough authority and resources for an effective and sustainable response to homelessness?
Well, this is one of my top 3 issues. If you've been following my Facebook campaign page, my 3 issues are homelessness and housing, to separate out affordability, who can self-care, public safety, and addiction prevention and recovery. So this is really why I'm sitting here in front of you, is because I feel like we have had a lack of action, meaningful action on this issue, and it is overtaking our conscience as a city, and it is overwhelming our sense of hope that we don't know how we can come out of this. So I really want to have a FEMA-style natural relief response to this emergency that we declared in 2015. We would have designated needs assessment locations where we can have organized first responders. And I think by doing that, we are helping our police and our first responders be organized instead of be reactionary all over the city and in this haphazard public camping way. At the same time, by doing that, we would have needs assessment service providers all on site so we can get people connected to the help. So we do know we are helping those who are unsheltered because they don't have to fend for themselves. Right? If they are battling mental illness and or dual diagnosis with addiction, they are going to fend for themselves, and it's not going to be within normative social behavior. We want to make sure that we are getting them the services they need, and that means that sometimes that's consequences. That means we need to be able to have these locations where there's a shelter bed where they can come to, then we can enforce our laws, and that allows the police to have the authority that they need to do their jobs and keep all of the rest of us feeling safe as well, knowing we're helping at the same time.
So the police are doing amazing work under the really difficult circumstances, and I really applaud our police. We need to support them and give them more resources. At the same time, they're not equipped to handle a lot of these really difficult cases, and that's where a case manager and the navigation team is really, really important. So I'm glad that we're bringing more resources to the navigation team. but it's still not enough. We need more case managers, more staff. Also, we don't have we need a police station east and west of I-5, I believe. So there was a big talk about that huge police station, but it's really difficult to get east and west in District 5. So if we have a small police station on the east and another one on the west, then the police can more effectively reach us to help us in cases. We also have no shelter north of University of Washington. We have no dedicated shelter in District 5, which seems crazy to me. So if we're gonna help people off the streets and help them, so let's increase. And also a lot of I read today in Crosscut that people dying on the streets, a lot of them are over 50 years old. And this is, in the 1990s, it was average was like 30-year-olds, but now it's like much older people are now more vulnerable to be homeless, and we have to look at that as well. So our nonprofits are over capacity. We need more shelter. We need more case managers on the street to connect people with resources. And once again, it comes down to compassion and love, because these are our neighbors, and we want to help them any way that we can.
So my number one idea is just to recognize that we have both a drug crisis and a housing crisis going on in this city right now. And that it's the drug crisis that does tend to be the primary reason for the impacts on neighborhoods that have really been leading to so much unrest across the city. And it's the drug crisis that the city so far has been responding to least effectively. The county and the state are ultimately the service deliverers for both mental health and drug or substance abuse treatment. But when you talk to people actually working in the field, what the need really is, there's more and more treatment service available, but case management, just actually helping people access and use the treatment is not anywhere near well-funded or adequately funded, and that's something that the city can provide as part of its partnership in this larger, as Councilmember Juarez was saying, partnership that we now have between the city and the county to try to address these issues. There's a program called Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion that I have been advocating for its expansion for a number of years now. It finally started in North Seattle last year. It still isn't in Lake City, it still isn't in Northgate, it's only on Aurora. They train police officers to identify low-level criminals that would actually be better served by case management and social service. But what we find is that people are saying, I don't want to have to commit a crime to get case management.
Thank you. One of the things that I've always talked about is public safety, and I just want to talk about why this has been a #1 issue for me since before I got elected. But now I voted to add, and I got $1 million in the budget for LEAD on Aurora in D5 in this last budget cycle. I also got money in the budget for the first time for God's Little Acre to expand hygiene centers 5 days a week, which we'd never had before. Also another $575,000 to the Seattle Helpline Coalition, and another $160 to Aurora Commons for navigation services for women who are in survivors of sex work and opioid addiction. And I could go on and on about the budget thing, but let me just come back to one very important issue. The $160 million police station that we all fought hard for, I hope you all remember that I took a beating for 2 solid years. I did not have the help of D4 and D6. It was only me for 2 years who got called the most filthiest names, who voted, who worked hard to get our police station. That police station was built 35 years ago. The conversation about a police station has been going on since 1998. 21 years. There have been 13 votes on the police station, 12 of which Mr. O'Brien voted yes. So why I say all this is I felt bad when we had all those hearings downtown, is anytime people from the north came down to City Hall, they got booed, they got called names, it was awful. And I want to tell you, I need your help this time around. I work closely with Chief O'Toole, I work closely with Carmen Best, she's one of my dearest friends, I work closely with Captain Sano. Thank you.
All right, next question. This is also coming from social media and folks in the community. People have questions about your plan to engage with neighborhood groups on a regular schedule. In particular, will you be willing to sit down with minority-led groups within 30 days of election and continue to do so at least quarterly? We'll start with Mark.
The answer is yes. And that's what I've been doing for a long time with Lake City Neighborhood Alliance and North District Council, Olympic Hills Community Council, and many other councils. And I worked really hard to make sure that we get the most invisible, underserved voices about that process. And I mentioned it earlier about we successfully applied for grants, so we make it a community organizing job. So our Ethiopian Latinx neighbors, for example, are helping us organize the community. And so I visited the Broadview Bitter Lake Council a couple weeks ago, and Licton Springs Community Council, and they're really doing great work. At the same time, they would like support trying to outreach to their underserved neighbors. And what we've done in Lake City is we've made a lot of mistakes, but we've found really good solutions to get our most underserved neighbors in the process. I want to adapt that model across District 5, Bitter Lake Broadview, Aurora Licton Springs, and apply that success we've had in Lake City all across District 5. And it's really, really invaluable to have these voices, because they're the canaries in the coal mine. What happens to them could happen to us all eventually, so we have to make sure that we really do our job to support them.
So this would be an absolute priority for me, not just that it would be much sooner than 30 days and on a regular basis. You know, when we were first starting the D5 Community Network, we recognized that we really needed to reach out to the underrepresented communities in District 5, and that led to the tradition that is still being lived tonight of having Cesar and others from the Lake City Collective come here to provide translation services. But what we also learned was that it doesn't work to ask them to come to you. You really need to come to them. You need to figure out, you know, where they meet, when they meet, and then go to their meetings. That's what I've done with Idris Mosque. That's what I've done with the Hope Eritrean Church, and that's what I would be trying to do in this role across the entire district. You know, Councilmember Juarez often touts the fact that she has a district office here in North Seattle College that theoretically, at least, she's at every Friday. But if you have tried to meet with her, I mean, first of all, you got to schedule it in advance, and second of all, it frequently gets canceled because she's got council meetings or other things that intervene and take her away. When you look at how Councilmember Herbold or Representative Derek Paulette handle these things, they come out, they have like roving coffees where they meet with people in the district.
All right, that's time.
Thank you, and you know, I really want to focus on being your district representative and why I ran. You know, I am here every Friday, and when I can't be here, I'm either on Sound Transit or I'm chairing for other committees. I am very proud of building Seattle Center 1.6 billion. That was my committee, I did that. I did the waterfront, $712 million, took me 3.5 years to get that over the waterfront. Yes, I'm downtown doing that, but most of the big ticket items that I'm proud of, I've delivered to my district. I'm not gonna sit up here and trash anybody, because that's not how you win a race. You win a race by talking about what you've done, what you're gonna do, who you are, and what your values are. Our district has had a district office. We have a district director. No other district has this, including Lisa Herbold. We have a district D5 business coalition that we created, which we have did with the chamber. The downtown chamber worked with us, that we host meetings that were part of the mayor's office when we were looking at the head tax. We were trying to bring business in. And by the way, our office, we created the D5 community network, and we made John the president of that. We did that because John asked to be a part of that, and I said I would do that. No, that is how it happened. That is how it was created. Now look, we may have a disagreement, but this is how things get done. You work together. John is a community leader. We recognize that. We understood how Department of Neighborhoods displaced some groups, but we wanted to make sure that those same voices were still here in our district, delivering services to neighborhoods and communities. So in order, we may be separated by I-5, but we are not separated when it comes to a community and what we want and what we need. When we need light rail, when we need transportation, and when we need housing.
I want to elect a representative who will actually talk with people and meet with people. And if you've watched my Facebook campaign page, I go door to door and I talk with people at their home. And I love talking to people at their home. I'm sorry, is there a problem? I'm speaking. Is there a problem? I love talking to people at their doors. And if you write into me, I will come to your door. And I recognize a lot of you from my Facebook campaign page where you've written into me and I've said my top 3 issues and you've wanted me to come to hear your top 3 issues. I've had people here and I could point them out. They have printed out their top 3 issues to give to me because they are desperate to be heard by their district representative. And I know that no one can do everything everywhere, but it's also impossible to do nothing and be nowhere. So it is really critical that we make sure that the district representation is there for us, because this is why we did it. And I will continue to door knock even after I'm elected, because I like it that much. And I actually think it'd be a great way to take the pulse of the community, check out the streets, see how the traffic flow is going, and meet people where they are in their homes, in their busy lives, because we are taking care of our families and our neighbors and doing our work and making sure we're volunteering where we can. But it's our job as an elected representative to come to you.
All right, next question, we're gonna start with John, I think. Am I keeping that straight? Okay, great. What should the city of Seattle do to further reduce its carbon footprint and prepare for the effects of climate change?
Okay, Liz. Sorry about that. That's one way of using less electricity. The city has a climate action plan, but it hasn't really taken it all that seriously. I attended a summit that a group called People for Climate Action sponsored back a little bit over a month ago, where we had the leader from the Portland department that oversaw sustainability and development. And Portland really is setting much more the example, and tremendous success actually in reducing their carbon footprint in a way that Seattle has not been seeing. So I think, like them, we do need to have an overall comprehensive plan that has teeth. But some of the actions that would be contained within that are, we've got 18,000 houses in this city that are still on oil furnaces, that the city could actually, through City Light, provide subsidies to transition to electric heat pumps. That would be an equity action as well, because those houses do tend to be concentrated in the lower income parts of the city. We need to expand the electrical charging infrastructure to be prepared for electrical cars across the entire city, and that also needs to be done with an equity lens, because the market is not going to be able to provide that in a way that's really fair across the city. We need to plant trees, and we need a much better tree ordinance to protect the canopy that we've got.
Glad that you asked that question. The Seattle Times asked us that question. They also did the Stranger as well. The 2 things that we have talked about and have come to mind is congestion pricing. As you know, SDOT put out a report in May talking about how we look at traffic congestion, how we reduce greenhouse emissions, and how it's an equitable transportation system. And the focus is not only on congestion and emissions, but equity for the very first time. We want to see that we did type of congestion pricing and looking at 12 other cities, how that will affect poor folk, working folk, disabled people, people who work different shifts, who need to get downtown, and more importantly, the revenue stream from that. What would we do if we did that type of congestion pricing, that we would take that revenue and we would put it back into communities that would have transportation choices? The other issues, we're already doing that. We already have light rail. We passed ST3. I sit on the Sound Transit Board now. In Sound Transit 3, as you know, we have our 2 stops coming in. We're going to connect with Linwood. We hope to bring out our 130th stop 7 years earlier, but we're looking at the transit spine to make it richer between Ballard and West Seattle. Little known fact, D5 is the only district that has 3 state highways and an interstate right through it. And we have one of the richest transit spines with Rapid Ride going down Aurora. That is why we have so many tech workers that live on that side of the freeway, because they hop on the Rapid Ride. What we want to do on 145th and connect it with our 2 light rail stations, so one of them, so you don't have to drive a car there, is working closer with Metro and Sound Transit to get better bus transportation east and west.
I'm going to be frank. I feel like that is a very critical issue that we talk about, but if we cannot even keep our city clean, I feel like we are no place to be talking about issues like this. We must be doing basic cleanup in our city, right? This is absurd that we are talking about this, yet we cannot keep our city clean. and we have people living in inhumane conditions on the side of the road. And here we are talking about luxury items like climate change. They are absolutely critical. No,
Oh my gosh.
Let's not scream from the audience, please.
wow. It is critical that we talk about it, absolutely. But we have to be taking care of things that are clearly on everyone's minds, which is the state of our streets. And we need to make sure that we are doing both our actions and our words. And I feel like we need to make sure we are taking care of that and also talking about these big important issues. But it really is critical. It is critical that we have a green, beautiful city, that we maintain our green spaces, our open spaces that we are known for, and that we take care of the environment. And we really do it wholeheartedly.
Well, I believe climate change is a really, really important issue.
Amen.
And it affects the most vulnerable people. And really, climate change is affecting the most vulnerable people all over the world. So I really believe it's important. And we're gonna have 3 new light rail stations opening up. The east-west connections have always been horrible in District 5. We really have to do something about that to connect people and get them out of their cars. Let's retrofit buildings. Look how many jobs we can create by retrofitting our buildings. And then also we can tie the job training right here at North Seattle College, get the young people involved so they can start learning how to work in green careers. Hellbent Brewery, one of my favorite breweries in Lake City. They're the largest solar brewery project in the state. 30% of their power comes from solar. You can drink green beer in Lake City. We need to make it easier for businesses that want to do the right thing to do that. My friend Edwin, who owns Spear Solar Energy, he says it's really difficult sometimes to get a permit to get solar on. Let's change that. Let's make it easier to get owner houses on solar. Let's not make it so difficult. Let's streamline the process. Also, let's get the youth involved. So we're gonna change this around, we're gonna turn things around. Let's get the teens and youth involved so they learn about the process, they're learning about green jobs. And this is a 5, 10, 20-year plan. We really have to do this. It's important.
All right, next question. John, I think you're gonna like this one, but we're starting with Deborah. Where do you stand on the Urban Forestry Commission's proposal to change the tree code? For example, do you support keeping protections of exceptional trees, requiring a permit before cutting trees of a certain size on private lots, limiting the number that can be removed in 1 year, and also, do you support funding 5 staff to enforce tree protections?
What was the last sentence?
Do you support hiring 5 staff to enforce tree protection? And
I mean a tree arborist. I think that's what they're talking about.
This is a combination of questions from the community, so I think that's why you're getting a little bit of a kitchen sink tree question.
So the first part is, yes, we want to protect trees. We've been working with Councilmember O'Brien on the tree ordinance. People are concerned about the canopy, so we've met with the, cannot think of the organization. John could probably help me out. Tree. Yes. And so that, of course, has been a priority out of Councilmember O'Brien's district. It's been a priority of ours. When you look at D5, the last time we looked, D5 had the most watersheds in green space because we have Thornton Creek, the north and the south forks. And we also have our golf course. And another thing is we have parks, but we have a lot of green space. And so we have the luxury because we have huge lots in the north end, unlike south of the Ship Canal where there was obviously more development, so we want to protect that. Going back to the arborist, since I chair parks, and I was involved when they had all that big tree cutting scam where someone would cut down 300 trees in West Seattle without a permit. We've been seeing that a lot in the city. I've been working with Superintendent Jesus Lagare about how we catch these people, also making sure that people who have trees in their home or that they have to get the right permit to be able to cut those trees down. What we find is a lot of people are doing that and not getting those permits, so you kind of have to it has to be complaint-based. You literally have to pick up the phone and kind of tattle on your neighbor or find out whether or not they got a permit to cut those down. But getting back to the whole climate issue, we need trees. That's what creates oxygen. As a woman, a Native American who's represented tribes and treaty tribes, I know the importance of green space.
Thanks.
Sorry.
It is critical that we protect our trees, and that is not happening. I hear from a lot of supporters that are concerned about the number of trees that are being clear cut in order to make room for transit. And it's a concern because we need to balance the interest of making sure we do provide transit, because that is going to lower our emissions. We want to make sure we're doing that, but we want to make sure we are making smart choices with the trees we currently have. And I know for one thing that we have is the arborist allows, sometimes you can actually kill a tree. You can't top it, but you could actually cut it to the stump. And I need to make sure that we are protecting those things, that people can't circumvent the way that we have the tree protections in place by doing something other than what is said within the ordinance. So we want to make sure that that's taken care of, whether it's on a private property or a public space. Those are things that are assets to our public as a whole, and they need to have the social value. We need to talk about them like they have social value and treat them like they have that value as well.
So, really fascinated with the idea of fractals. Trees are fractals, and fractals are all over in our environment. And when humans look at trees and they see fractals, it has a stress relieving effect on them. And so obviously we got to protect our trees. But I think let's get the neighborhoods involved. Let's have a grassroots collaborative process so people feel like they're part of the process. So let's protect our trees, but also let's involve the neighborhoods. And the older trees are really, really special. We don't want to lose some of these ancient, beautiful trees. So let's work together to protect them.
So trees are crucial for climate change, but they're crucial for a lot of other things, for habitat, for stormwater, water quality, and as Margaret was saying, for mental health, for just the quality of life for everybody here in the city. The existing tree ordinance that we've got in the city was passed in 2008 as a provisional ordinance with the expectation that it was going to be updated with something that truly had teeth within months. Well, that obviously did not happen. So here we are now midway through 2019 and we still don't have an updated tree ordinance. You know, the council just passed MHA not too long ago. They're the mandatory housing affordability legislation. They're going to be soon passing legislation for the accessory dwelling units. You know, there are good arguments for those, but it is a shame to be passing those ordinances without also having dealt with the tree canopy, because both of those are going to lead to the loss of trees. You need to have some larger strategy, some larger plan to balance that out and to in fact start gaining on our tree canopy across the entire city. That's the city's official policy, that we need to get to 30% tree canopy, or something like theoretically 26% now. We're actually going down in terms of what's happening on the ground rather than what we should be trying to do. I think the Urban Forestry Commission should really have the first crack at what that ordinance looks like. And I hope we move forward with it as soon as possible. I hope it gets passed actually before you even get elected.
Great. Next question is, what is your proposal to increase capacity of the North Police Precinct in terms of facilities, and how will you make sure that this plan gets implemented? We'll start with Ann.
So as many of you may have already seen, I have published an idea and a plan that I would move the North Precinct to the Sam's Club that's located on 99. I've also met with Captain Sano. I know that's an area that they would really like to have. It has fuel on site, so that would save some transportation time. It would make it more efficient for them to do their service that we so desperately depend on. It also would provide a more evidence location for them. Instead of them driving all the way down to the south end like they have to currently, they can have an evidence location to store that and do the research that they are required to do on that. So that would be a great location for it. It also is one of the locations I've suggested that we use for my FEMA-style emergency relief response, so that would be added protection already there for people who are experiencing homelessness. They would be able to be there and have the wonderful protection of our police force that would be there on site. That would already be there just by nature of their job. It has ample parking, it has the square footage that we need. We could repurpose that and have it be a great location. I then would want to have a second location, and I would like to look at Magnuson because we're having the housing going in. I think it would be on the other side of I-5, so I agree with Mark. I want to have two, one on the east and one on the west. And I think that capacity would help us spread around, because right now we are at numbers that are below what even Spokane is, even though our population is higher. So our patrol officers are down, our number of burglary detectives are by far down compared to Spokane, and for the same size that we have within the North Precinct area. So we need to have more officers for sure.
Yeah, I think one station on the east side of I-5, another station on the west side of I-5, smaller stations. Let's look at satellite stations as well. We really want our police in the community, making connections, getting to know people. That's really community policing. That's really how we can turn this around. Also know that there's not enough training facilities for police officers to get trained. That's part of the backlog. We need to increase training facility capacity as well.
So we need a new North Precinct building. We've needed it for a very long time. The existing one is way undersized, even for the size of the police force that we have now, and we've had a plan for a long while that we haven't actually been able to implement to significantly increase that force. It's built in a wetland and has always had all kinds of environmental problems because of that, so it has to move. And I believe, as both Ann and Mark have said, that we need to have two precincts in the north end. Right now, the North Precinct covers everything north of the Ship Canal. That makes it more than 40% of the city's geography, more than 40% of the city's population. That's more than twice the size of the next largest precinct. And you know, it's not just an administrative thing, as Mark's saying again, in terms of community policing. To have a second precinct would just provide an opportunity for the police to have a better community relationship with a different part of District 5. Now, the current location that we planned up in the Bitter Lake area at 130th and Stone, I think is still the best place that I can think of for where the first of those facilities should go. It's an area where crime is definitely a major issue. The city already owns it, and that area badly needs major public investment. The second facility where it ought to go, maybe more like U District or Ballard. I mean, this is a big district, and those are the other areas where the crime is highest.
Thank you. As all of you know that every district in this city has its own police station except for the north end. Districts 4, 5, and 6 have had to share one police station. We know that we have over 300,000 people that live and work north of the Ship Canal. So this is what I want to say. We have a police station that's 35 years old. We have 154 officers that it was built for. We have 254 officers that are in there now. One thing that we haven't touched on that's really important is that when we talked about the police station, when we originally looked at the original designs, we wanted it to be the embodiment of the 2012 consent decree. Remember, the Department of Justice found us pretty much in violation of the Fourth Amendment and excessive force. We were hoping that that police station would be the embodiment of brick and mortar for community space. The line that I've used, and I've said it over and over, in order for us to be in line with the consent decree, community engagement being required under the consent decree is that community engagement requires community space. And in the new police station, we had rooms in there. We were anticipating having more room for navigation. We were anticipating having meeting rooms in there. We wanted it to be an open space and not a quote-unquote bunker. You know what the police station is like now, you have to buzz in and get in there. It's not accessible. It was built in '84. It doesn't fit the sensibilities and the needs of who we are in 2019. The other issue that a lot of people don't talk about is that we have to have those community relationships. We have to ensure bias-free policing, and we need a sense of community. In order to have community policing, you need community space, and you need officers in there, and that's what we need when we hire the last 40 new officers.
Thank you. So we are actually running a little bit ahead of time, and I have one more question from the community, and then just be prepared. I'm going to give you all a bonus 90 seconds at the end. So if there's anything that you feel you were cut off or didn't get to address, or if you want to use that time for your canned closing statements, which is not my favorite, my preference for that for these that time, but it's up to you. So just keep that in mind as I ask this last question. How will you balance the needs and opportunities of District 5 with those of the entire city, ensuring that Seattle becomes healthy as a whole, not district by district? We'll start with Mark.
There are a lot of issues we have in common, District 5 and the whole city, and then we also have our unique issues. So let's look for common ground where we can work together, and also we have to bring up our unique issues, and then also let's learn about the unique issues in other districts and help other districts with that. So it's not going to be district versus district, but we're going to represent our district and also help others get to where they want to be as well.
So District 5 is by far the most diverse part of North Seattle. In fact, when we had our very first meeting of the D5 Community Network, we put together a presentation to just kind of introduce everybody to District 5, because at that point, districts were new. People may have been used to their part of their neighborhood, their part of the area, but didn't have a full sense of it all. You know, there are three major pockets of diversity in District 5, and, or in North Seattle rather. And that's basically along Aurora, Northgate, and Lake City. The only other places where you've got really significant diversity in all of North Seattle are the University District, really just more from the student population, and Magnuson, where the city has kind of created its own affordable housing community. But where the communities have really kind of grown naturally, they're all up here. We then have a lot of things in common with South Seattle, with Southeast Seattle, and with West Seattle. And the city's got these equity policies that are supposed to guide where a tremendous amount of the city's investment goes, but we haven't been seeing that, whether it's sidewalks or major transportation infrastructure, the North Precinct. There's a whole lot of things where the city has not been guiding investment to our area. We're basically, okay.
This has been one of my favorite questions, and this is not hard to answer because this is representative government. We do it nationally, we do it statewide, and we certainly do it in Olympia. I represent the city of Seattle, but I honor the needs of my district. That was the point when the Seattle Times wrote an op-ed in 2013. One of the examples they used is no one in the North End had anyone on council. So when there's actually used this example, when there is a dangerous sidewalk at Northgate, who do we call? There was nobody to call. Now you all call me, and I want to continue to do that. The demographics have changed dramatically in the North End. D5 alone is now 51% renters. We now have 82 languages in D5 alone. Also, our North African, Latinx, and Native American populations have grown immensely. We're working hard to get, working with the LGBTQ community, Catholic Community Services, Mother Nation for Native American women who are homeless. We are trying to work with all those organizations to put them up in the North End. People are moving north. I believe that you helped me. You put D5 on the map. You let people know south of the Ship Canal that people in D5, people north of the Ship Canal, have the same issues that people south of the Ship Canal. They want affordable housing, they want transportation, they want safe schools, they want community centers, they want sidewalks, and they want a neighborhood and a community and a council member that listens to them. Thank you.
I really do believe that our D5 issues are the same as our city. I'm gonna stand up, if it's all right. Because like I said before, my top three issues are homelessness and housing, separate out affordability, who can self-care, public safety, and addiction prevention and recovery. And I feel like that is a blanket across our city at this moment. We really are at a crisis point. We want to see that there is responsiveness with our council, with what we are all experiencing. And we are having all of those issues within D5, we are certainly having them across all the districts. It really is happening in our city. We want to know that it's going to get resolved, or at least make some progress, measurable progress to get towards that game. I met with Cancer Pathways because they were getting fined by the city for uncontrollable graffiti on the outside of their building. They did not go and put that on there, right? There's graffiti, and they are a cancer nonprofit. They do not charge for their services. I reached out to them because I thought that's absurd that they're getting ticketed and fined for graffiti on their building. And that's something that's occurring far too much up here. And no one from the council had reached out to them. No other candidate had reached out to them. I reached out to them only because I want our city to look clean. I don't want it to be covered in graffiti. I want to see a sense of civic pride. I want a new pattern of behavior in city leadership that says, we take care of our city. We don't neglect things, whether they're in a different district or in our own district, right? We want to see that there's a pattern of care. So I think my top three issues are the same in our district, and they are the same citywide, and I think that there's no separating them. And once we see progress on them, we're going to see the progress in District 5 and as well within the city.
All right, so in the interest of actually finishing up right at 8, I am going to give each of you 1 minute to just say whatever you'd like to say to conclude the night, and then we'll wrap up on time. And we'll start with John.
So, I'm outdoor belling very frequently and often am asked, why are you doing this? And not just kind of asking for the political speech, but really, this is crazy, given everything it takes to go out and run for this office and, go out to doors night after night after night and have all the other events. Why are you putting yourself through this? And the answer basically was that, politics does have some similarities to war. And one of the similarities is that, when they talk about war and what motivates soldiers, ultimately it's really fighting for the buddy next to them, fighting for the guy in the foxhole. And through my community work over the last 17 years, I've gotten to know people across the entire district. I've worked on all kinds of different issues. I've worked on community development in every part of the district. And I want to help them succeed. I want to help community development occur in the way that those communities want to see it happen along Aurora and Lake City.
Thank you. I've lived in District 5 for over 30 years. I've been a renter, a homeowner. I've raised my children here. I've been an attorney for 33 years. And I've represented tribes. I've been a King County Superior Court judge. I've been a public defender in legal services. And I have to tell you, this is the most difficult job I've ever had, but I love it. And I'm running for re-election for three really good reasons. I want to keep listening to what the city wants and what my district wants. I want to keep delivering major brick and mortar projects and delivering millions in social service programs. I want to finish everything that we've done so far. And I want to keep delivering those projects to the city and this district. Seattle is not dying. We have become a tech city. We now have Google coming, we have Apple coming, we're excited about that, and that is the city who we are. We are the city of the future. Thank you.
I am really here because I'm part of the grassroots movement of the frustration of our city. We want to see that our city is taken care of. We want to see that there's someone that is within reach that we can talk to. I've heard from homeowners that reached out to their council member because they were experiencing really extreme difficulties around their neighborhood in the Licton Springs Liberia encampment. And they were told that it was an SBD issue, that was a police issue. So they weren't helped, so they were redirected. There's also a small business owner who had an RV behind their business, and they saw young females going in and out of that RV constantly. And they were again redirected. It was not my issue. So when I was a caseworker in Capitol Hill, we solved problems. We did not redirect someone to an agency. We tracked the problem. We made sure that there was responsiveness there. And frankly, I want someone who is going to make sure that they are accessible. And that means attention as well. And I have been firsthand experienced the lack of attention that's there. I wrote in, I did not get a response, and I want that to happen.
So I'm running for city council because District 5 is ready for a new positive vision for District 5. I lived in Lake City my whole life. My dad's from Puerto Rico. My mom grew up in Lake City. They met and had Chinese food for the first date, and then a year later I'm born and I became a Seattle Rican. So I really love my district. And one way to solve graffiti is to paint murals, beautiful murals on buildings. I started the Lake City Mural Project with several different partners and businesses. We have 20 plus murals in Lake City. We got the teens involved painting it. That's how you deter graffiti, 80 to 90%. You paint beautiful murals. My dad is a United States mayor. He's been mayor of Aguadilla, Puerto Rico for 22 years. I've watched how he has led the city with a team of people to make it better. So I learned from a very young age, if you don't get involved, you can't make a difference. Puerto Ricans are treated like second-class citizens. It's very important that we get involved and we vote. I'm very afraid of displacement in my neighborhood. We have a lot of really beautiful ethnic businesses that are just in danger of being displaced. And a lot of my friends maybe have to leave the neighborhood because things are getting too expensive. So let's build the best neighborhood we can.
Thank you to all our candidates. I appreciate keeping the time.